benefit the vulnerables and the common man and woman in the society. And at the end of almost 10 months of rigmarole, debates, consultations, public hearings, we came to the conclusion that yes, indeed, what you did and what you are doing now will be remembered for generations to come. No parliament makes a law for one particular regime. Laws are meant to last, and this is one law. These are laws that will last for generations to come. Nigeria has changed with what we are doing today. And I want to congratulate the entire members of the House of Representatives and the Senate, and congratulate all Nigerians and all stakeholders who made contributions towards what we are doing here today.
So just like maybe not like the Nigeria here, Akwabiole, Kolu, and others who have wrecked Nigeria even further, they are giving themselves accolades, and they put together a new tax law, which itself is an actual job put together to further prove to the IMF and World Bank that they could give them more money. So in reality, right, Tifnumbu has added over 80% more to Nigeria's debt. Somebody sent a comment after the program last night and said Tifnumbu did not devalue the Naira. I don't understand what he meant by that. I mean, you know, but they call it floating the Naira because they wanted the market value too, yeah? And they put together a tax program in which I want to believe their research told them, right, that there is a chunk of demography in Nigeria who actually have so much money, but they are not paying taxes. So they have to put together a mechanism to ensure that they pay, right? And what they pay. So in all of this, okay, in their own permutation, a country whose GDP keeps going down and down, a country that can't really show that is investing in major infrastructure for real, other than the jamboree, like declaring the refineries working after they stole over $4 billion for its renovation. And then the refinery pack up 2 weeks later for maintenance. So using propaganda and lies, when real investments are actually not being done, then you are now building a law. I mean, so you are putting together a structure that will capture those ones that you imagined are making so much, but they are not declaring them. So, but you don't care about, as the system keeps churning out poorer and poorer people, because to you, there is a program of government on the side to give people who can feed some food. But we are interested in those. Imagine somebody who is selling a human hair of 400,000 naira. Do you know, online, there are these people who are selling things. Some of them are making so much money, but they are not declaring it. So we want to tax them. You see, these ones that they are targeting, they are also ignoring the fact that they are human beings, Nigerians inside Nigeria, who are also affected by Tifnumbu's other policies and that of insecurity. So it is in the midst of all of that, right, that you imagine that some people are still surviving. So those ones we don't enter Kalu, we don't enter Kana, you can't do much about those ones, but there are others. So you are not seeing how the insecurity and other things are actually like not only pushing businesses and people out of jobs and all that, right? But no, there are more people. So that's kind of like their plan. So when you ask, who are you planning to tax? They will say, no, it's not the poor, like you are exempted. If you are not making 800,000, if you're making below 800,000 naira, you are exempted. And to them, millions of Nigerians are not making that, as millions are also making that in their own way. Anyway, I call it a voodoo economy. So there is no point in, beating that. The same guy who ran down the entire country so far in 2 years. So in 2 years, and you still have 6 years to go, Abi. 6 years. I want to die, people do. Those who came out and organized, they even organized a road show to convince people, right, that it was in their interest that they removed subsidy. And some people bought it. Not that a lot of people felt like they probably had no choice. But they had those who bought it. And today they are explaining to others that imagine you that is the pawn on their chess table, going online or offline, convincing your fellow victims that it is in their interest that they remove the subsidy, because it would have wrecked Nigeria. They ask you, where did you get that from? They say the politicians told you. The experts. Who are the experts? The people appointed by the criminal politicians. It is you it will affect. But when it comes to their own emolument and all of that, that one will not wreck Nigeria. Do you get it now? Like, you have 200 million people that would have to manage 5 trillion naira so that they could buy cheap oil. Do you get that now? 5 trillion naira subsidy. Now, still scam that they are sharing the money among themselves. So, robbing this, instead of robbing the people by taking it out of their pocket, by forcing them to give it to them, they can even just take it out of their pocket as taxes, right? And then use it for subsidy. So 5 trillion naira subsidy. I don't even want to go to the story of the subsidy fraud and how it got that high. But I'm using the number because now them they put them out. 5 trillion naira Nigeria oil subsidy. 10 trillion naira, so that 200 million people can have access to cheap oil, which will indeed keep transportation costs down. And in that process as well, keep the food price or cost down. Like that economic chain of reaction like that. All they have to do is to just put 10 trillion naira. Say, 10 trillion naira, okay. Do you know that if there is no... They shall convinced you, and some of you are still convinced till today, that subsidizing you, millions of you, will wreck Nigeria. But in that same budget, these guys are budgeting more than 15, 20 trillion naira for themselves. Handful people will not reach 10,000 though. Or maybe they are more than 10,000. Let's even just use some number for all of them across Nigeria. Together. Now, let me break this down again, just to give you a wider understanding, a perspective and understanding. All right? So that it's not like we are focusing in Abuja. So when you put all of that together, what they put in the budget for themselves, openly, no shame, no nothing, no question asked. Even if people react, that's their problem. What can they do? Trillions, so for people who don't reach 100,000, their greed is so much that they then went to town to convince the needy that if they continue to feed the needy, the greedy will suffer. So therefore, they need to continue to feed the greedy in order to starve the needy, the people. And the needy, they were convinced that Nigeria is going to, let us be honest. Let us be honest. Subsidy is going to destroy, subsidy is going to educated people. And when you ask them, where did you hear that from? The politicians, the politicians, the governor, even the experts. Who are the experts? These are the experts.
Finance Committee Chairman, Appropriations Committee, and of course, Chairman, House of Representatives, Finance Committee. Honorable Ministers, Chairman FIRS, Chairman Tax Reform Committee, SA Energy, SA Media, and the PPS, Mr. President, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Today is a day that marks a defining moment in our economic history. The signing of the tax reform bills into law is a testament, Mr. President, to your commitment to fiscal responsibility, equity, and national development. In brief, these laws simplify our tax system, they broaden the tax base, and in a fair and equitable manner, as well as promoting voluntary compliance by taxpayers. As we know, for decades, the tax architecture has been constrained. We've had a low revenue.
Nuisance Lele. Nuisance Lele.
I no one waste your time. Those are the experts. That is one of them. Experts. Economic experts, you know. That's the guy who is the head of Tifnubu's economy team. Wale Idun. So, it's all right. If you survive after Ronuku, I'll be here. There are those who called me enemy of progress under Bokuwari. Today, na them come they say Bokuwari destroyed Nigeria. So that if nobody they fix them right now. You know? Our experts. Guys, I saw an interview. It was an interview granted Charles by Yakubu Golos. And I didn't bother kind of like watching it at first until I saw somebody who cropped out a part where Yakubu Golos, who is now like 91 years old, is very old now, said Ojukwu was wrong about what he told people about the content of the Aburi Accord. Right? He said he wasn't feeling well when he went into that conversation, that accord, that agreement. You know? He said he had fever. Thereby, he just had to agree to the Aburi Accord. That it was when he got back to Nigeria, that when he now got better, he now realized that he's been manipulated to accept the conditions for the accord. You know? And according to Ojukwu, the conditions for the accord was that the Biafrans shouldn't leave now. Instead of them leaving, they could create a confederation whereby eastern part of Nigeria today, including this Niger Delta and all that, right, today, would have been an autonomous region and possibly independence by now. It was a gentleman agreement. So he said when he got back to Nigeria, he realized that he was manipulated. Like, what are you talking about? But when he said he had fever, I was like, what's he talking about? Fever. Alaye, you were dancing, you were holding different women at that accord. For those of you who might want to see the video, it was dancing, they were drinking, they were eating, they were, you know, it was like Gowon was even like the happiest at that accord. It was like the happiest guy. Ojukwu was just somebody who was like, you know, kind of calculative. So some people are saying that Gowon at the time, who was a secondary school certificate holder, Ojukwu at the time was not just a degree holder, it was a master degree holder, like was a PhD, sort of like a graduate or so at the time. So they said, because it took several efforts to get the eastern part of Nigeria government, led by Odimegwu Ojukwu at the time, it took them several efforts to be able to bring them to that, that negotiation and agreement. Because at a point when things became hotter in 1960, that same 1967, right? When things became very hot, Ojukwu and his own people felt like they were not safe outside the eastern part of Nigeria, right? And of course, Gowon, Golos, who was the head of state, was also under pressure, right, to stop the Biafrans from leaving. Then they moved it. They said, okay, let's move it to another neutral ground. Let's move it to Ibadan. But again, at the last minute, it was said that the Eastern government still felt like no, until it was agreed to be taken to Aburi in Ghana, right? And the Ghana government hosted them. So to go on, finally, they have gotten a solution, something that will avert any war. So Gowon returned back to Nigeria. So did Ojukwu return back to Biafra. There was no declaration of Biafra at the time, per se, like, you know. Then Ojukwu, Golos got back to Nigeria. It was then that they explained the implication of that accord to him. That at the time, the richest part of Nigeria was about to be ceded for the Easterners. And with the existing form of like, bad blood that the men of that time had for the Igbos. So it was like, no. And immediately, right, they said they were both going to make an announcement. So Ojukwu was waiting for Gowon to announce and say they've reached a truce. There will be no conflicts. And these are the conditions. So they are going to work together and ensure. So he waited and waited and waited. There was nothing. Immediately he knew. That was Ojukwu. He knew. He said he knew that the whole thing has changed. It was then that they actually received the official statement that no, Aburi Accord is non-binding on Nigeria because it was not signed in Nigeria. And therefore, the eastern part of Nigeria remained part of Nigeria. And it was this Yakubu Golos that ended regional system of government in Nigeria, for the record. History of Nigeria is written by criminals who committed a treason, not only just against Nigeria, but against the Nigeria people. Historically, the criminals who are supposed to die in prison for, human rights, not human rights. I'm talking about, like people were supposed to actually die in prison for war crimes, so to say. They got rewarded. So they wrote the history. Aguiyi and Rossi, that stopped the revolution that could have possibly saved Nigeria, according to this young officer in 1967, January. So Rossi stopped them. And they've already made an announcement that they are canceling regional system of government, but they didn't have the power to implement it. Rossi took over. He also himself didn't have the time to execute this regional system. Or sorry, the one Nigeria nonsense then. Because while Rossi was still alive, eastern part of Nigeria was not part, it wasn't state, it wasn't this one Nigeria. They still had eastern Nigeria, western Nigeria, northern Nigeria, even as Aguiyi Rossi cancelled regionalism. It was Gowon who now came. Reneged on Aburi Accord and broke Nigeria into 12 states. An announcement that obviously prompted Ojukwu and others too to declare Biafra, that Biafra won't be part of that. And a full-blown war was launched from the mountain of the middle belt of Nigeria. The rest is history today. But Gowon said he reneged because he had headache or fever. If you can hear him.
Well, I think that is the interpretation that we don't know whether that accord was the actual final result written from him was not to be done until after we got home.
But you agreed to the accord when you were in Gaf.
No, this is the accord. It is not a question of agreement in accord. This, it is when we come back home, and I made this. I made a statement. When you come back home, and I make a statement that you about Aburi.
Right. Because that's why it was called an accord. An accord means that you had agreed.
No, accord. But then it has to be done in Nigeria before Friday.
So you needed to come home and discuss it.
Unfortunately, when the first people doesn't want to believe it, I was having a serious attack of kind of fever or whatever it is, and I could not make any decision.
At
at home.
Right.
When we arrived in home, and Ojukwu was one who then, when he came, he went and made made the statement. He made the statement about the Aburi code, and the governor of the Midwest, Duke AJ, then rang me at very early hours of the day. To tell me, he said, "Have you heard?" So I said, "Have you?" And you know what Ojukwu had said? So I said, "No, I haven't had anything that that happened, but that is the reason why I could not make this statement, which would have then clearly say exactly what we agreed with about it." And he told me, like, "Oh, we said you are going to move a cart, that the military is going to be etc. going to be controlling now from each from each organization, for example." And was what I said today. Is that actually, honestly, is that what we are doing? But he said, "Yo." So I said, "Well, honestly, I do not know what that is." So that was different the time, and later on, I had to ask the other governors what they think, and they were able to say, "Well, that is not what it is." So we had to organize a meeting of all the governors, and he was invited to attend so that we can deal with the Accord. And we met at NIFO in Benin, and he did not turn up. And of course, all the secretaries to the government, all the were there, all the governors were there. He was invited, but of course he said because of security reason he cannot come, so he didn't come or send anybody. And we discussed that Aburi discussion, and for example, the permanent, the secretary to the government, the West, did ask, came and appealed to me, as a Christian, please, if we can make sure that that accord, what we agreed is in the true spirit of Aburi. And I told him, as a Christian, I can assure you that that is the way it is going to be. And we had that meeting.